Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's debate. This is the first debate for the Democratic primary candidates for the third CD here in Wisconsin. And again, thank you all so much for coming. It is vital that we hear from our candidates, that we understand their viewpoints, so that we can choose the absolute best person to represent us come November. So, without further ado, I did want to make one pitch. Beginning Saturday, the 16th of April, which is this Saturday, all 5 of these candidates will be looking for signatures on nomination forms. They have 30 days to collect signatures. They need 1,000 minimum here in the 3rd CD. At our new La Crosse Democratic office at 2318 State Road, just across the street from Javavino, we will have signature forms for all candidates. So if you see a candidate today that you think, yes, that person deserves to be on the ballot, please drop by our office and sign their nomination form. Without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce Anthony Chergofsky and our candidates for the 3rd CD.
Thank you everyone for being here. My name is Anthony Chergofsky, and I am the faculty advisor for the College Democrats and the faculty advisor for the College Republicans. So I guess that makes me the independent moderator for tonight's debate. Great to have all of the candidates here. We're going to start with 2-minute opening statements. We randomly drew the order for the candidates, and we will go right down the line for our first round, our opening statements. That means that we start with Rebecca.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me here tonight. I'm so excited to be with you all. Thanks so much to UWL College Dems and to the La Crosse County Party for all your hard work in putting this together, as well as to Professor Chergofsky for moderating tonight. I grew up in this district on a dairy farm. I was really active in 4-H all throughout my younger years, showing cattle at the Dunn County Fair, Eau Claire County Fair. And like a lot of Wisconsin farmers, my family had to sell our cows because of the price of milk and competition with larger dairies, which was, tough to see my family do. We've had a farm in this district for 150 years, and we now raise Angus beef cattle. But I learned a lot growing up on a farm, not to give up, when times are tough. When it's 25 below and the drinking cups are frozen over, you still got to make sure cattle have something to eat and drink. And, when you've got a sick neighbor down the road, you show up and you bring them supper. I went on to go to school in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I had the support and help of federal programs like Pell Grants, work-study job, and also waitressed all 4 years of school. And I ended up coming back to the Eau Claire community and starting my own small business in downtown Eau Claire, where I run a retail shop. And I also run a nonprofit organization that supports women entrepreneurs throughout 10 counties here in West Central Wisconsin by providing startup capital to women who want to start their own businesses. We've helped 27 small businesses launch. And because of that work, Governor Evers appointed me to the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation Board, where I've really been able to support small businesses in rural communities in an even greater way. And now I'm running for Congress on issues that I think everybody in this room here cares about, and folks that are listening online care about. Things like access to affordable quality health care, broadband expansion, and expanding jobs and creating jobs in this district that give people the quality of life that I think that they really deserve. And so I'm looking forward to talking with you more tonight, and I hope to be your representative from Prairie du Chien, La Crosse, Eau Claire, and to Stevens Point. So thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca Cook. We go to Mark Newman.
Thank you, Anthony. I'm here, it might sound a little cliche, but because I love America. And I think about when I first thought about getting into politics, my father having transmitted to me this love that I learned as a child. He volunteered to serve in the Navy to fight the fascists of, in that case it was Japan by the time he was able to enlist underage. And he transmitted that love to me. I'm kind of a 60s American. And even though I can't remember the inaugural address of John F. K., I do remember what he said. After he described the importance of our country providing for human rights and freedom of all peoples, he said, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. And citizens of the world, ask not what America can do for you. Ask what we can do together for the freedom of all men. And that message inspired me as a youth. And I remember as we lived through the civil rights era, and some years later, I was able to stand on the Lorraine balcony, not a few feet from where Dr. Martin Luther King was killed, and think about what our country was living through. Then, on the 20th of January, 2017, I was listening to the inaugural address of a new president, and I was aghast at the description of the carnage of America. That disturbed me so much. I left, I was at work listening, I left and went home. The next day I got up and I joined the Women's March. What had happened to our country? From a we, it had become an us who are beat down. He was speaking to his base. He was not speaking to all of us Americans. That disturbed me. To what point I decided that for whatever years I would have left, I would devote them to being a politician, to entering the political arena, because I wanted to make the contribution that I can make for the future of the country that I love and that I've received from those who went before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark Newman. We go to Deb McGrath.
I'm Deb McGrath, and I'm from Menominee. And my father, Al Ballas, was congressman for this district, and my mom is Lolly. She was a teacher, and they taught me to listen. I'm the oldest of 6, and I grew up learning, knowing that service was the highest responsibility in our community. I didn't have money for college, but the military did. And I joined, I took my father's example, and I joined the Army at a time when few women did. And I took its toughest assignments and training. And on the first morning of airborne school, and before light, I saw many of my fellow soldiers left and right falling out of the difficult drills and runs. And by sunup, I was 140 soldiers. In the remaining weeks, the sergeants would have loved to have made me quit. They spit on me in runs. I did extra push-ups while others waited for chow, but I wouldn't give up. And on the morning of our first jump, they put me first in line to lead those soldiers because I had gained their trust. And as I jumped from that plane and I saw the tail leave me, I knew that leadership took courage and risk. And I hit the ground running with a conviction and a dedication that has never left me. The stakes of this election are high. I have 25 years of serving our country, putting my country over politics. I am a wife and mother, and I know the challenges that people are facing. Our families deserve affordable and accessible health care, lower pharmaceutical prices, and the best schools for opportunities. Our economy can be revitalized by good paying jobs, union jobs, and support to our farms and businesses so that they may be sustainable and innovative. And the strength of our whole nation depends on infrastructure build-out, cybersecurity, and the protection of our planet. I am Deb McGrath, and I hope to earn your trust and your vote on August 9th.
Thank you, Deb McGrath. We go to Brad Paff.
Well, good evening. My name is Brad Paff, and I'm going to share with you something tonight that may seem a little radical. But this area matters. Rural Wisconsin matters. Now, you're not going to hear that if you listen to people from the East Coast or the West Coast. But quite frankly, the people here in the Driftless region have been overlooked and left behind for too long. And we need to stand up. I say that because I was raised here on a dairy farm in northern La Crosse County. And I've spent my entire life working for the people of this area. When Governor Tony Evers appointed me Secretary of the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection, I worked tirelessly for our farmers. And when those partisan Republican politicians in the state Senate threw me out, I turned around and ran for the state Senate. And with your help, I won. The thing is this, I can promise you this. Nobody is ever going to turn their back on you again. And that includes Derek Von Orden. Derek Von Orden has one plan for Washington, D.C., and that is to burn it to the ground. He participated in an insurrection on January 6th. That's not how we do things here in western Wisconsin or in central Wisconsin. This is God's country. We know the difference between right and wrong. We're patriotic people. And probably the least patriotic thing someone can do is to participate in an attack on this nation's capital. We need to move beyond the hollering and the screaming and the kicking, and we need to get back to the basics. We need to invest in our children and our grandchildren. We need to make sure that our community stays safe and healthy. We need to fix our roads and our bridges. And we need to work hard in order to find our farmers new markets for their products. But in order for any of that to be done, we need to fix a system that too long has looked down upon areas like this and ignored us. That won't happen. I represent this area in the United States Congress. I thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, Brad. Path, we go to Brett Knudsen.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen, comrades of all backgrounds. We stand before you as a great board of people. We have a successful politician. We have a successful person in the CIA, a doctor, and an entrepreneur, and a warehouse worker. But I tell you here that I am a worker. I'm from your background. I have two beautiful girls with a beautiful wife, and I come here to be as a worker. I know the desires, the needs of each and every family. I stand there, I struggle. I have $2,000 I need to pay for a new fridge right now because we had our electric go out. We have things that we need to accomplish, but we go into that overtime. We work the time that we need. We need things that we need to survive. We need food, we need health care, we need internet. These are the things that connect us. Each and every worker from all backgrounds, whether it be working down in the slums of down in the bayous, it doesn't matter. We're all connected by our labor. We're all connected by the one thing that we need to survive. And there's people that, like Republicans say, there's people leeching off of our system. There are people that take off benefits from our system. It's repugnant, but the people aren't homeless. The people that are leeching off our system are called CEOs. Those are the people that take away all the profits from your labor. The things that you produce, you make the profit. You make every single penny and dollar that they create. They aren't the people that make this economy, the laborers are. And I'm here that I stand for each and every worker. We need to stand for what we believe in. Our enemy isn't overseas. Those are people that are working for their labor. And yet we're sending people off to fight against other workers for no reason. $800 billion in our military budget for no reason. To fight people that we don't even know. Our hate is not against other people from other cultures, from other countries. Our hate belongs towards a class, and that's the capitalist class. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett Knudsen.
I would like to remind all candidates to speak directly into the microphone when at all possible so that our online audiences can hear a little better. Thank you so much.
And thank you to our online audience for joining us. We're delighted to have you joining us for this debate. And we get into the question portion of the debate. I'll ask questions of the candidates. We will alter the order. We will start with Mark Newman. We'll go down the line and come on back to Rebecca Cook. And we will mix up the order as we go today. Our first question is about probably the top issue facing the economy today, and that is prices and inflation. Candidates, today we found out that prices in March were 8.5% higher than they were a year ago. That is the fastest inflation rate since 1981. What are your proposals to deal with inflation and price increases, and what is your vision to improve the economy? Mark Newman, we start with you.
The economy. I think my answer is that the economy works for us. We human beings don't work for the economy. That's my answer. Let me explain how I get there. You know, when I lived in Africa, I lived in a different kind of economy. It was in many ways a barter economy. But I lived in my own personal economy of trying to make myself famous and claim some spot in the sun as a great white transcultural international doctor serving Africans. And we ran into many problems, not least of it was a failing state and the end of Zaire with the death of the dictator Mobutu. In the end, I would say I was clinically depressed. I couldn't get there. I couldn't be that famous Albert Schweitzer. And I had to ask myself, what is it that makes it important to be a human being? And I looked to my neighbors, the people of Lukaku where I lived, and many of us would say, oh my gosh, they are so poor. They live in adobe houses and some of them don't even have, tin roofs. They have thatch roof. And I said, but the people I live with would never say they were poor. And so I asked, what is it? Well, they needed a few things. They needed the security of their house where they could have their family at night. They needed the security of food, but they really wanted to have free time to spend with their family and their neighbors and their friend, to enjoy the relationship of networking as a human being. And finally, they needed a purpose, which for a lot of us at certain points in our life is just getting those kids grown up and get them out of the house. But if we have those things, we're in a fabulous economy. So I think when all of the, the speaking heads and the experts, when you look at an economist, put 5 of them in a room and they'll have 5 irreconcilable opinions. But when all these people are done in talking about our world, what we need to do is to think about the world we live in and realize that we do not work for the economy, but this economy really is to serve us. Thank you.
Thank you. Deb McGrath.
So there's no mistaking it that now families are really struggling in an unprecedented way, and that we have to do something immediately. And when we look at our infrastructure and the build out that is planned, it's just not happening fast enough. And it's because we've been crippled by it in the past decades, and we did not put the investments in that we needed to. We need to make sure that people can get a $15 an hour wage. We need to make sure that we have that supply chain is fixed so that we can get farms and businesses can get their product to market. And we need to be able to, for Wisconsin to get its fair share. When we look at what the gas prices and what we are facing now, what can be done in America in terms of getting more gas and having tax incentives, especially for those with means tested, those people who need it, and businesses that are needed. But then we need to work long-term through our alliances so that we can make sure that oil prices are brought down worldwide. This is not just an American problem, but we need to solve it in America first. And we need to make sure that there are immediate steps that we can put for jobs and put for people to be able to go back to work, and that they get paid for what they're worth, and that women can make as much as men do.
Thank you. Brett Bath.
Well, thank you very much. $3.68 gas, $4.50 diesel fuel, that has a real impact on our working families out there, a real impact. Our family farmers are getting ready to put a crop in the field in the next month and a half. Fertilizer costs have gone through the roof. I hear that every single day. We need to invest in our economy. We need to rebuild our manufacturing sector in this country. Too many small towns have seen factories close down, been shipped overseas. And with that, it's been a loss of jobs, but also a loss of dignity and camaraderie. We need to invest in our infrastructure, our roads and our bridges. We need to make sure that we have broadband that connects, not just in the city, but also in our rural areas. As a state senator, I've worked hard for that. We need to make sure that we continue to create innovation through our technology that we have, and we apply that technology through our technical schools and our 4-year higher education. But we need to make sure that we don't forget the struggles that are taking place at the kitchen tables right now, where people are trying to figure out how to pay their bills. We've heard an awful lot about child care. A lot more needs to be done with that. That's a serious issue. I represent constituents in my state Senate district that drive 20 miles to take their child to child care. And they have to turn around and drive the opposite direction to get to work. There is such a need for child care. I can't tell you how important it is. But the thing is this, when you turn on the TV, they talk about how Wall Street's doing. Well, where I come from, we don't measure economic success on Wall Street, we measure it on Main Street. And where I come from, I recognize the fact that you need to, quote, pull yourself up from the bootstraps. I've heard that. But you know what my dad would say? You still have to have boots in order to pull yourself up. So let's recognize that, and let's work together to rebuild this economy.
Thank you. Brett Knudsen.
When we look at the baseline problems of inflation, it really comes down towards the Federal Reserve. In 2019, prior to even the pandemic flushing out, there's $4.5 trillion given out to big banks. Those big banks give it out to big loans, and all this money goes out towards big corporations. These big corporations take in all the profit. Meanwhile, the workers are working on subsistence. They don't get the wages that they deserve. We need to fight for unions. We need to fight for minimum wages that people can live off of. Right now, $15 an hour with inflation occurring. It's almost not even sustainable on $15 an hour. And that's because one of the main things that is occurring is because large corporations, one in 7 new houses are being bought up by hedge funds. People that are taking this investment, they're taking away, using it for profit. They're artificially inflating the cost of housing as we speak. And this isn't because of workers, like this is all the fault truly goes on to the corporate class. These people are trying to take away every single penny that you own. And that's the baseline problem. It's the corporations, and to solve this problem, it's unionization, democratization of our capital inflow. And that's it.
Thank you. Rebecca Cook.
You know, inflation is hurting us all. Raise your hand in here if you've, felt the burden at the gas pump in the last couple of months. And your utility bills? Yeah. I'm someone that's a small business owner up in the Eau Claire area, and I can tell you firsthand, we've been doing a 19-county tour. It's taken a lot to fill up the tank. It's taken a lot to pay everyday bills like utilities. It's costing a lot at our grocery store to pay for the price of everyday goods. I was talking to my mom today who said, I can't believe the price of eggs that I'm trying to buy for, coloring Easter eggs with my grandchildren. The cost of everything is going up, and I think there's a lot of economic issues on everyone's mind as we move through this pandemic. And I think corporations have really been taking advantage of everyday consumers. I think they're taking advantage of the pandemic that we've all struggled and been through together. I think they're taking advantage of the war in Ukraine and price gouging consumers. And as your next representative in Congress, I want to take those folks on. I don't think it's fair that corporations are seeing record profit margins while we are struggling to pay our everyday bills.
Thank you. Our next round of questions, we'll start with Deb McGrath, and then we will go down the line and come on back. So we asked the public for questions, and the number one topic that came in was climate change. Candidates, what sense of urgency do you have on climate change, and what policies would you support to deal with climate change? Deb McGrath, we can start with you.
Well, climate change is certainly if not the top priority, it is certainly one of the top priorities in our country, and it is a national security issue as well. And when we look at Wisconsin, Wisconsin has led our nation in conservation efforts for over 100 years. We were the progress mark that other parts of this nation would look at. We're so proud of our water, of our air, and of course our land, which our farms and our homes are on. And when we look at, we feed the nation. And so what is most important here is that we can move forward with innovation and sustainability, and that we can do this through private, public, and academic partnership, so that we can again lead the way. When we look at what climate is, what the problems that is happening worldwide, we finally now have an administration that has working together with other nations so that we can have international standards, and that we can work together on those. Because believe me, Russia doesn't care about climate change. They want to have a bigger sea so that they can have a bigger navy. But so we need to work as leaders of the world, but it starts right here at home, and we need to be able to support our farms and our businesses and our individual homesteads in being able to make this sustainable, not just for our, with energy and vehicles, but with through every single core of our economy.
Thank you. Brett Paff.
Well, thank you very much. Climate change is impacting all of us. As a state senator representing this region, I can tell you firsthand, the banks of the Kickapoo River have exceeded and flooded the communities of Ontario and Lafarge and Viola and Reedstown too many times over the last 10 years. I've been with residents and local officials. They've said, what can we do? How can we be part of the solution? And they've become part of the solution. I am proud in Monroe County, they have a climate change initiative where local individuals are stepping forward and talking about what they can do when it comes to watershed monitoring, what they can do with watershed rehabilitation. I am proud in the Wisconsin State Senate to vote for and longtime advocate for producer-led watershed agreements, where farmers come together and landowners come together and talk about what they can do on soil conservation efforts. I was proud that a piece of legislation that I was a strong advocate of was signed into law by Governor Evers when it comes to cover crops. So farmers, after they harvest the corn and the soybeans, can go in and they can plant a cover crop that will help keep that soil intact during the winter months. We can do more when it comes to carbon sequestration. Our family farmers are ready to step forward and do that. We can do more when it comes to innovation, working with our manufacturing sector in order to make sure that our food processors, as well as our manufacturers, have the technologies and the tools in place, because they don't want to spend money on energy. They don't want to emit excess carbon. They want to be as efficient as they can. We have the opportunities to partner with them. We can do it. I think the ingenuity is in this room. We don't need a top-down approach. We together can work to do this. We can all come together. I will partner with you. Together, we'll make sure that we keep our climate moving forward and we lower the carbon that we're emitting. Thank you.
Thank you. Brett Knudsen.
When we look at all the largest emitters of CO2 within our environment, it comes down to big oil producers, it comes down to the energy producers of other countries like Saudi Arabia, who are pumping out oil day by day. We have Russia pumping out oil day by day. We need to find a way to cut back on oil within our own country, to find a way to be self-sufficient within green energy, to not be reliant on oil. We need to find ways to be more renewable, wind, nuclear, and then also solar. Like, there's ways to invest within our economy. It takes time to process through it all, but we need to start it today. When we even look at the Build Back Better, it only covers 5% of what we need. We need more. So we need someone to lay down a foot and we need more. We need someone to take accountability for what we're doing today. Because right now it's not enough. I look at my kids and I wonder what their generation is going to do. Because when I look at my parents, I'm like, what did you guys do? Where were you? Where were you fighting for this? We knew about this all the way back in 2000. But that's why I'm here. I want to fight for my kids. They have a future that we can fight for. And it starts right here. It starts right now. I'm not going to look back in 20 years and tell my kids that we just didn't try. That's why I'm here, and that's why I'm trying.
Thank you. Rebecca Cook.
You know, there's no doubt that Western Wisconsin is beautiful with our natural resources. I'm someone that loves to take advantage of that, from canoeing to hiking around here. I'm somebody that you can count on to take the big votes when it comes to climate change in Congress and holding fossil fuel companies accountable and ensuring that our big polluters clean up their own messes. But I think, like politics, climate and the environment is also local. And when we look at this district and some of the water quality issues that exist right here in La Crosse with PFAS in the water at French Island and the city wells in Eau Claire, we've got big issues in our own backyard, and so that's something that I'm committed to working on, the things that really are impacting constituents now. From a PFAS perspective, calling for more testing and research and thinking about new ways in which we can remediate the things that have already happened. From some of the farm runoff issues and coalition building with both the Wisconsin Farmers Union and farmers to really think about algae blooms and some of the issues that we're seeing in our waterways and streams throughout this region. I'm really excited about the dollars that are coming to this region through the infrastructure bill that I think will be investing in green energy and clean energy jobs. That I think not only will cut out some of our reliance on fossil fuels, but also be strong employers. And my hope is to create union jobs in this district. And so, I think, like I said, all of these issues come back to how do they impact us locally and how are they impacting people in this district. And I want to fight for them both at the federal level and here at home.
Thank you. Mark Newman.
I think that climate change is our issue for our generation. I think it is an emergency. I believe that it is an existential threat to life on our planet and potentially life for humans. I think that we need statesmen, real statesmen in the world and in our country to lead us in a good direction to face this true emergency that is our generation's emergency. When I think of a statesman, I think of somebody who is politically skilled, devoted, and selfless. What I don't think of is what we see going on in Washington, D.C., with all of the showboating and trying to get clicks and trying to get self-attention. We need world statesmen and women, and we're United States statesmen to lead us in this very important issue we're facing today. One of our problems as human beings, we have a hard time making a true assessment of risk. We always think that if there's A, it's going to lead to B, and B is going to lead to C. We always think linearly, but our climate is not linear. It is nonlinear. There are multipliers in that climate. There are closed loops that reinforce one another, and we get surprises. For over 150 years, we have known that carbon dioxide causes the accumulation of heat in the atmosphere. We've known that. Even as much as the 1940s and 50s, we could see that the carbon dioxide level in the atmosphere was rising, but we thought, oh, it's geologic. We got centuries to worry about this. And then all of a sudden, towards the end of the 20th century, what happened? Explosion. Our scientists began to realize this is coming way faster than we ever expected, and their assessment is that it's accelerating, not being linear. It is very non-linear. My son asked me once, some years ago, Dad, how is it that your generation messed this up and my generation's going to have to straighten it out? I didn't have a quick answer. All I can say is it is a necessary response that we need now, and we need true politicians worldwide and nationally who take it seriously and deal with it like as if it was a world war. Thank you.
Thank you. For our next round of questioning, we start with Brad Paff. And the second most popular topic in our question submission was healthcare, particularly Medicare for all. A lot of people are very curious where the candidates on this stage stand on Medicare for all, if they're for it. If they're not for it, what they would propose for healthcare reform. Brad Paff, we start with you on healthcare.
Well, thank you for the question. First of all, let me just say this. Healthcare costs are too expensive. We pay too much for healthcare right now. And I hear that all the time. I will also say that we need, as a state of Wisconsin, need to accept these federal Medicaid dollars. And as a Wisconsin state senator, I've been loud and clear on that. You know that Wisconsin is only one of 12 states not to accept the federal Medicaid dollars? We've left over $1 billion with a B, dollars on the table out in Washington, D.C. We could be doing something with that. I think that's wrong. I've also been a strong advocate when it comes to lowering prescription drug costs. Because I think without a doubt, we have to take a look at what's happening with these pharmaceuticals. In fact, I was proud to recently stand with Congressman Kind at a press conference in which we capped the price, talked about capping the price of insulin. Because right now, what people are paying for insulin, this is insulin. You can't go without it. And the thing is, the price gouging is taking place. The big pharma right now is morally wrong. I say that as a father of a son that has type 1 diabetes. He can't go without. So I will work hard in order to make sure that we lower our overall health care costs. I'm going to work hard to make sure that we have greater access to health care. I'm going to work in partnerships in order to make sure that we can have rural and urban people have access to affordable health care. I'm also going to work hard when it comes to mental health parity. I want everyone to know how important that is. I stood up to the Republicans in the legislature in Madison when they wouldn't fund a program for farmer mental health counseling. That's wrong. So those are some of the things I'm going to do when it comes to health care, and because I recognize how important it is.
Thank you. Brett Knudsen.
Medicare for all, I am for it. At the baseline, when we look at other ways to negotiate prices, we can even look at what was introduced with the insulin prices. It was only covers people that have insurance. When we look at people that don't have insurance, they aren't covered. They still have to pay the full price for insulin. They aren't covered. They aren't being looked at for at all. Like, these are the baseline workers. They don't even have insurance. Like, these are the fast food workers. They don't have enough money to survive. Like, if they can't pay for their insulin, they need to either ration out how much rent they're gonna have or how much insulin they're gonna have. And at the baseline, we need Medicare for all. Was it a Congressional Budget Office just declared, with a Republican lead actually, that 68,000 lives could be saved each year if we instituted Medicare for all. $680 billion could be saved within the medical institution just by implementing Medicare for all. Medicare for all is the solution. And it comes down to the baseline of people, lobbyists, from the pharmaceutical side to the insurance side. There are people lobbying against this. And the baseline solution, it takes one simple sentence of a change to change it from 65 to include all ages. And it doesn't even just end just there either. We need to include mental health. We need to include things like vision and dental. We need people to have coverage that they need to survive. I mean, when we look at teeth, we need proper teeth to chew our food. We need things to get along. That's what we need. Healthcare.
Thank you, Rebecca.
I believe that the people in this country deserve access to affordable, quality healthcare. I'm someone as a small business owner who receives my healthcare coverage through the exchange, and I currently have catastrophic health insurance, and it really doesn't cover much. I think we worked really hard to get the Affordable Care Act passed and just celebrated its anniversary recently. I think it's a program and something that we don't want to blow up, right? It took us so long to get there, so how can we fix it as it stands? I can't sit here and tell you and promise to you that I can make Medicare for all happen in a 2-year term or 4 years in Congress. People need relief now, and the things that I'm thinking about when I think from a healthcare perspective are what are fixes that I can work across the aisle with this kind of chaotic Congress to make happen. Things that I think about, my mom had a heart attack last summer and had a 6-figure hospital bill, and if it wasn't for Medicare, there's no way she would have been able to afford that. Growing up on our family farm, we didn't have health insurance. When my dad cut his fingers off, my grandpa drove him to the hospital versus taking an ambulance. So I've lived a lot of this, firsthand, and I think from a Medicare perspective, expanding it to cover vision, dental, and hearing, the very things that deteriorate as folks age. My parents go to Mexico to get their dental care done because it's more affordable there than it is in our own country. I believe we need to stand up to pharmaceutical companies who are absolutely price gouging consumers and not negotiating with Medicare. And I think something, if we want to look to how can we expand Medicare more rapidly to cover more folks, annually continue to lower the age in which people can buy into Medicare. We'll continue to expand on an annual basis the folks that are a part of that program. And so those are some of my solutions. I think it's not enough to just say I want access to affordable quality health care. What does it look like to make that happen? And what does it look like to get that done now versus waiting for a sweeping bill that might not come negotiating across the aisle?
Thank you. Mark Newman.
Medicare for all. It's something that I have been advocating for, teaching people about, spending a lot of time traveling around western Wisconsin over the last 5 years, and educating myself. I believe that our healthcare system as it is ineffective and inefficient, and many times it's cruel. When we add financial toxicity, these big bills on top of suffering families, I saw it when I was a pediatrician and a father with a very sick daughter having to worry, will I have to sell the farm to pay for this? But I don't want to go there today. I want to think about something that's even more serious to me as a healthcare worker, our prior healthcare worker. And that is, I'd like us all in our hearts to think about what it is that each of us considers to be very precious to us. Think about, for example, just the sun on our face and the fresh air we breathe, these very human things that don't cost anything. Think about the relationships that we have with other people. Think about cuddling a baby or hugging your father at his last breath. These things, as important as they are the true human moments of relationship. And think about when you go to see your physician and you disclose to your healthcare worker some truth about yourself you haven't told anyone else. That relationship is so precious. And what we have done with that relationship with our nurses and with our therapists and with our physicians, with our healthcare workers, with our mental health workers, is we have commoditized that. We have made it into something that we can buy and sell like it's a sack of potatoes in the grocery store, and it's not. This is way beyond. This thing that we do as health providers is something that's crucial to who we are as human beings and caring for one another when we're ill. And it does not belong in a marketplace. It does not belong in a monopolized marketplace. It does not belong where other people are taking huge advantage of us, taking profits off of our need to care for one another. We need a single-payer health care, publicly funded, available to all people living in this country because we are all human beings and we need to do this for one another. And we need to stop letting private entities take advantage of this need. I am definitely for Medicare for all, single payer. There's a bill in Congress, HR 1976, and if I get there, when I get there, I am going to work to move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Deb McGrath.
Healthcare affects every single one of us. Every single family has got a healthcare story that we understand that this is the biggest thing that we need to solve in our nation right away, and that we need to take immediate steps. My own family, I was just 12 years old when my brother died of cancer at 6. In Menominee, there was no care for a young boy with Hodgkin's, and my father would take him to Madison to get his health care. And we had to navigate the costs and the treatments of that at a time when there wasn't much else to give. Just a few more years later, my brother was born with spina bifida, a debilitating disability, and there we were again. But we are a family. We worked together to make sure that we had the treatments and the health care and the costs that he needed. My father died of Parkinson's. We made sure that he wanted to stay at home, and we made sure that we took care of him. So when we look at health care, this is not just about going to doctors and going to clinics. This is about being able to care for health care in our own families. So this is an interconnected problem with caregivers, with pharmaceutical costs, with the fact that we don't know how much a procedure is going to cost, even if it's a hip replacement or something like a cataract surgery, those have become normal things. Why do we not know how much those would cost, or that they would be bundled? So when we look at some of the things, we're building out health care for seniors who need it and deserve it, so that they can live with dignity, with their dental care, with vision, and that we can expand health care to make lower age. But we could also do things for rural health care right now, and that depends on our interconnectedness with telehealth and being able to make sure that we have high-speed internet out to these hospitals so that they can really work on it, or that somebody can get and be in their home and talk with someone and not have it cost not run their data bill out. So and then we look at reproductive care. We haven't talked yet about the fact that Roe v. Wade is still an issue, and this is about our health care as well. So we need to really look at this as an interconnected problem.
Thank you. Our next question relates to the last one as we build on the topic of social programs. We'll start with Brett Knudsen. And candidates, a major conversation in Washington relates to the Build Back Better proposal, which has a lot of social programs in it. Programs that target all sorts of age ranges, but two that I want to focus on with you are the child tax credit and child care. The birth rate is plummeting in the United States, parents are struggling, and we are in a situation where it's a real question what happens next when it comes to policies to support children. So Brett Knudsen, I'm going to start with you. Where are you at in terms of policies to support children and families?
Absolutely. When it comes to childcare, I know firsthand I got two beautiful sitting right at home right now. And I'm lucky enough to have a wife that takes care of them when I need, but she's also got things that she needs to do on her own. She has to take care of bills. She has to go out and do her own errands. We need childcare. And the fact is, it's super expensive. I think everyone in this room knows firsthand, and we need the care that it takes to make sure people have the childcare. We need to subsidize people. We need to ensure places like Quick Trip, they have something where we're having workers that have childcare straight up front, center, straight through the company. And if we can subsidize companies to have the childcare, to take care of what you need while you're working, because let's face it, we both need both parents working in this type of economy. So it's one of those things where we need to subsidize right where it starts, and we need good childcare. We can't just throw them away and think that they're just going to be fine for 8 hours a day. We need to make sure that they're fine, that they're taken care of, get good education, that there's proper care, that it is institutionally proper, that they're educated, have a degree, and we take the care that we need to make sure that people are educated in these programs. It takes time, it takes money, it takes investment. I think that the Build Back Better is a good start to what we need, but it takes more pressure. It takes more pressure from the left. Far too long we've been taking pressure from the right. And it's time to push back because, as we can see, the right is becoming more and more radical. So it takes time to pressure from the left to say that we need the time for childcare, we need the time for education, we need time for what the people need rather than just corporations.
Thank you. Rebecca Cook.
I think that I could probably speak for everybody here in knowing that parents are exhausted, educators are exhausted at the burden that the pandemic has placed on a lot of folks. It's not just a cost of childcare, but it's also, taken folks out of the workforce, and particularly it's impacted women who have kind of taken on that burden of having to be home to rear children. I think it's also a very nuanced issue. It's something that, as I have conversations throughout this district, is brought up often, in particular in rural communities, where it's not just the cost of childcare, but whether it exists at all together. I've asked local elected officials, people that I've met, throughout this campaign, what's your solution, and what are you doing to figure this out in your community? And here in La Crosse, Mayor Mitch Reynolds has a really great idea, one in which that it's, a cooperative here in this community that employers, potentially pay into. I think that that's a really interesting idea. I think it's not a one-size-fits-all for every community and how they approach this issue. The other thing that, I've seen implemented throughout this district and throughout our state is an incubator that really encourages people to start child care facilities. So helping train folks to get a child care facility started in a smaller town, and by providing startup capital to help them see that through. So I think it's, a nuanced issue, one that we can tackle from a federal perspective, but I also think it takes a federal policymaker to really work with people at all levels of office from different municipalities and state government to think about what we can do to really move us forward, because this plays into our quality of life in so many ways, especially in our smaller communities. It's housing, childcare, and jobs, and that's I think what I've been hearing the most from people in particular in this district that they're concerned about. So,
Thank you. Mark Newman.
When I think about social programs, I think our desire, our lack of desire as a nation for these oftentimes comes down to our respect for property rights versus human rights. I personally believe that human rights should always prevail over property rights, but we also need those property rights that allow us to make something out of our lives. And so we can see sometimes how the Republican side says, we can't spend all of this money because we need it for making something out of ourselves. But when it comes to human rights, my great experience in my life of learning about that was the time I first helped to deliver a baby. I remember I was a third-year medical student. The resident called me forward. The woman was laboring well, and the baby came and landed in my hands. This wet, blue, limp human being stiffened, took a wail, and became pink. And I said, my God, this is the best thing I have ever seen. Think about that mother and the parents, the father. What did they dream for that child born that day? Well, she was probably pretty tired, but the next day, she was thinking, I want this child to thrive. I want this child to have the fullness of life. I want this child to know love and to be loved. I want this child to have his and her human rights respected. I want my child to be a member of a thriving community. That is human rights. That's my experience. And that's what we as a country always need to hold first above our property rights, because we all need that. When it comes to the child care that we're talking about, Anthony, our human rights depend on respect for our dignity. And that child has a dignity that needs to be respected. That newborn needs parents at home on paid work leave to give that child that first year of development. The children that stay in child care prior to school, public school, need to have qualified care providers, and they need to have well-paid care providers. And the children in school need public school, well-funded and respected teachers. We gotta respect the dignity of our children, and that's what I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. Deb McCracken.
With respect to my fellow candidates, I'm a mother and a grandmother. And if you want to talk about somebody going to Congress and who's going to fight for child care and who's going to fight for kids and fight for this, I speak from experience in this. I gave up my career because we could not afford child care, and because we wanted to make sure that someone was at home for them to be able to thrive. When I look at child care, that it is more expensive to have child care than it is a college education. This is insane. And that the workers are marginalized in an invisible class. That they don't make $15 an hour. Sometimes they don't make but $7 or $8 an hour. And but the most important person coming into your home, or that you hand your child to before you want to go to work, this is the most trusted person in your life now, because you've given this person who you care most about to that person. These should be people who are making well over $15 an hour,
And we should be incentivizing the fact that they are certified, that they can go to school, that they can get their own child care while this happens, and that means tested, people can afford that child care to go back to work. I think this is the number one thing that we can do to revitalize our economy, is to make sure that we have proper child care in this country, and it will make sure that children then also have the opportunity to thrive going forward and going to school. Families depend on this.
Thank you. Brad Path. This is a huge issue. This issue I hear every single day. As I mentioned earlier, as a Wisconsin State Senator, I've been working hard on this issue. I stood with the school district of Viroqua just a few weeks ago as they are creating a pilot program when it comes to child care, because they recognize how important it is. In Viroqua, for every child that has child care, there's 5 children that are looking for child care. As I mentioned, there's parents in the Vernon County area that are driving 20 miles in order to get their child into a child care. And then they have to turn around and drive to work. There's not an easy solution here. We have a very diversified economy. People are working independent as solo operators, or they're working in a larger community setting. That is why we need to work in a public-private partnership. But we gotta bring dollars to the table in order to try and find solutions that fit a specific area and a specific economy. This is important. These are our children. As a parent, I can tell you, it's also very affordable. But you gotta have it in the right place. You need to make sure that your children are given the tools that they need to succeed. And I think we all recognize that. I say this, let's never stop pushing on this issue. This is one of the most important issues that's out there. And I hear this from Republicans and Democrats. The La Crosse Chamber of Commerce is taking a lead when it comes to child care efforts, because it's one of the #1 issues that their membership in the business community is seeking. The La Crosse Public School and other local schools are working to find solutions. We all need to be involved in this. Thank you.
Thank you. We will go back to Rebecca Cook to start this next round of questioning as we turn to foreign policy. Candidates with our foreign policy section, I want to look back and I want to look forward. First, looking back, how would you assess the Biden administration's handling of the war in Ukraine? Second, looking forward, what future steps would you recommend Congress and the Biden administration take to deal with this conflict? Rebecca Cook, we will start with you.
Great, well thank you. I'd first like to say that my heart absolutely goes out to the folks in Ukraine that are dealing with a war and a humanitarian crisis on an everyday basis. And I think that the way in which the U.S. has approached this is something I absolutely agree with, and choosing to use diplomacy first. And not choosing to have a knee-jerk reaction in which we meet this with more conflict. And so, the sanctions that I think that have economically crippled Putin and Russia and the oligarchs is something that I absolutely agree with. In supporting President Zelensky, as he's been, in very many senses of the word, an inspiring leader. I'm grateful in the support that we've, shown him thus far. And then, some of the things that we've done, again, in working to cripple some of Russia's strength with taking them out of the SWIFT financial system. Those are all things that I support. I think that there's an opportunity to, push this conflict down in a way, in a peaceful way, without having to resort to force. And I'm speaking about that today with obviously not knowing what's to come. I think that, if there is more, I think, bullying that we're seeing from Putin, and more conflict that is an immediate threat to the United States in particular, I can see picking up an armed force and would support that, and would, as a, your future congressperson, support that.
Thank you. Mark Newman.
I think our Biden administration is doing the right thing. We all want to live in safety and peace in our communities, and we want safety and peace in our world community as well. And we Americans have the value deep in our hearts that helps us to know how to achieve what we want and what all humans like to live in community. And that is what we found at the origin of our country, and what Abraham Lincoln spoke about at Gettysburg. 87 years ago, our founders brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that we're all equal. We believe in freedom and fairness. And when we see people in Ukraine not being allowed to live their lives freely, but ultimately being oppressed in ways that's hard for us to even imagine and watch on TV, it's right for us to intervene. Sometimes you have to use force, and that's what we're doing. And in the future, we need to continue to follow those ideals, along with, as my mentor that I spoke about in my opening statement, my neighbors of the world, ask not what America can do for you, but ask what we can do together to advance the freedom and the rights of man. And that's what we need to do in the future. And I agree with what we're doing, and I congratulate our administration and the collaboration we're having with NATO. Thank you.
Thank you. Deb McGrath.
Well, first, I think every single person in this room, we join with the strength to Ukraine. And we know that if there's one thing you've got to have in your life, it's freedom. Because if all other decisions after that become so much harder. And this is an unjust war. I have served 25 years in national security, and I have lived 5 years in Russia. I know that Putin is a tyrant, and I know this playbook, and he will stop at nothing. And I believe that what we have done was the unprecedented use of diplomacy through our alliances, the unprecedented use of intelligence and military support that was not escalating, because they could have gone very badly so quickly. But because the administration moved very carefully together to make sure that we were working in concert, then that is what, and that our own Congress started to give as much money as they, with humanitarian aid and defense, and sanctions, and that we continue to, that it was a good way, but that we still need to do more. I think that the most important thing is to signal to Putin, you're alone. Your paranoia and this, you are in this alone. You have lost all moral currency, and you have now put yourself into your own Cold War, your own economic Cold War. So when we look at what we have going backward, we're working together, but now we need to make sure that we are strong. And our cyber support is strong, and that our underwater sea cables are strong, and that the strength of our economy is strong, and our families are strong, so that our nation continues in this strength. Because what we are going to see is a longer conflict, and this strength is based right here at home, right here in Wisconsin. And I know that we are standing with Ukraine.
Thank you. Brad Path.
Thank you. Putin is a thug. He's a pariah. He's a war criminal. What he has done is wrong. He crossed another country's border. We shouldn't be having this here in the 21st century. I think we all agree on that. I support the administration standing with the Western world, Britain, as well as France, Germany, and even Australia has come forward and said, you know what, enough's enough. We all realize that Putin has gone too far. But the thing is this, where's Derek Van Orden on this? We know Tucker Carlson on Fox News seems to be Putin's puppet. He seems to be saying pretty nice things about Putin. tell you, Derek Van Orden's got really quiet on this. This is the time you stand up. People can talk about being a patriot, and we've heard him talk about that. But right now, we've seen another country invade another country. And now's the time to stand up. And where's he? We don't hear him. We don't see anything about him. And I think that's wrong. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to ask, where's Derek Van Orden when it comes to issues like this? Because I think now, more than ever, we need to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Brett Knudsen.
I would like to start off by saying that I agree with many of the sanctions that are taking place against Russia, ensuring that they don't have the chips for further military infrastructure, that they don't have the oil proceeds that they need to build up more profit. But I also think that when it comes to standing ground to judge Russia, Russia looks at us like we're a laughing stock. We have 2.4 million Iraqis dead because of our invasion. We have Palestinians to this day being oppressed. We have Yemenis being starved to death, 300,000 just this last year, and we're arming Saudi Arabia. The U.S. is. But for some reason, when it's a Western country, that's the only time that we're paying attention. That's the only time that the U.S. really shows that they care. We're giving away billions of dollars to kill millions of people. We need someone to stand up and say no to all of it. We need someone who's going to stand for the Palestinians, someone who's going to stand for the Yemenis, someone who's going to say no to this bloated military budget of $800 billion going to oppress billions of people around the globe. It's disgusting. It's literal genocide going against in the arm of your taxpayer money. It's disgusting. And the fact that it's even being talked about, we have no moral grounding. Look at Biden. He has no moral grounding. When I stand as a Democrat, I'm a Democrat. But what are we talking about? Biden was the head of the Senate when we had the invasion of Iraq. The Senate lead going into the Foreign Committee. It's disgusting. 2.4 million Iraqis dead. What do we have to show for it? We need to take the moral ground now to say enough is enough. We want to look at Ukraine, let's look at the rest of the globe. We're going to stop the genocide as a whole because it's disgusting that we have war in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. I need to get to one more question, candidates, but I'm going to ask you to stick to 60 seconds for your responses to this. I do need to get to it because it came up a lot in the questions that were submitted, and this question is about electability. Simply put, candidates, why are you the best candidate to take on Derek Van Orden in November? I can give you 60 seconds apiece, and we start with Mark Newman.
Start now. Well, I learned about this in Crawford County. You know, I approached a lot of thought into policy and what's good for our community, and I was down talking with the Democrats of the Crawford County committee, and we had some good exchange of ideas, and then somebody asked me, how are you with mean people? And I said, oh, I'm fine. Are you mean? And he said, no, I'm not talking about me. You know, the mean one. And he's talking about Derek. And I said, well, sheesh, you know what? Derek, that race is going to be on character. There's no policy there. My concern is not Derek. My concern is the people who like his presentation, his, in my mind, absence of character. That's what bothers me. And that's what I think I can attract, because I have in my practice dealt with everyone, whether they're right or left, green or brown, and what language they speak. There was no question of what camp you're in when your child is sick in front of me. And I was able always to receive people into my life, and I will carry that same ability, that same skill into my political career. And that is what's going to allow us to attract people that otherwise seem attracted to Derek.
Thank you, Deborah.
I've spent 25 years in national security and defending our country and putting putting my country over politics. And I have worked together with people of diverse backgrounds to solve some of our toughest problems. My dad used to tell me when he went into the floor of Congress, there were two ways to get to the floor. One was through the Republican cloakroom and one was through the Democratic cloakroom. So every other day, he walked through the Republican cloakroom so he could shake hands on the way in. So that when they got to the toughest problems, they were friends, they were colleagues, and they could say, you know, that happened in Louisiana too, because he'd spent time working with them. But let's make no mistake on what this election is about, and it is about beating Derek Van Orden. And he is an insurrectionist, and we need someone who can go toe-to-toe with him. Someone who will stand up to a bully and never back down, never stop fighting for you, for our country, or for Wisconsin.
Thank you. Brad Path.
Derek Van Orden cannot serve in Congress. Let's just be clear about that. Anybody who goes to Washington, D.C. on January 6th, stands on the steps during that riot, doesn't have the moral character or the judgment to serve in the United States House of Representatives. Any one of us up here, I will support. We need to support to serve in Congress rather than Derek Van Orden. That's how important this is. I've defeated Republicans in the past. I know this district. I know it like the back of my hand. My family's been farming in this area since they came to this country in the 1800s. I met my wife here at a 4-H leadership luncheon. We raised our 2 children here. I spent most of my adult life working for the people of this area. I can win this seat. I will win this seat. The most important thing is any of us will do a better job than Derek Van Orden. Thank you.
Thank you. Brett Knudsen.
When I looked at electability, I call a duck. I see what things are for what they are. I don't stand for some sort of party ideological line and just cater to one person or the other. I'm for all workers across all lines. I think we all have the same day-to-day struggles. We all have the same resistance that's put in our face every day. And at baseline, yeah, we have to beat Derek Van Orden. That's what we need to do, that's what we need to be, and I think I cross those lines to ensure that I work for all workers. I'm not here for one party or the other, I'm here for all people. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca Cook.
You know, I'm the only working class person running in this race. I grew up working class and I remain to be working class, still running a small business, a nonprofit, and running a campaign for Congress. You know, I wasn't endorsed by the former congressman. I'm not an establishment Dem. I think that this district is going to be chosen by voters who are looking less for the political elite to represent them and more everyday folks coming off the sideline to serve the communities in this district. I'm also not the legacy candidate in this race. My dad was not the former congressman, but my dad was a dairy farmer, which I think carries a lot of clout in this region. And we're running one of the biggest grassroots campaign I think that this district is ever going to see. You know, I think that's how we're going to beat Derek in the end, is getting to the communities that we haven't shown up in as a party, talking to people across the aisle, having conversations with independent voters about values and the things that we all care about as Wisconsinites. And I plan to do that by relational organizing, working with communities throughout this district to really get folks to volunteer from the communities they're from, to knock on their neighbor's door, to do deep canvassing and go to the last dirt road to ensure that we're showing up and listening to people. And I think that there's a lot of value in that, and I think that's what makes me different than this primary field and ultimately who can take on Derek Van Orden.
Thank you, Rebecca Cook. I'm going to come right back to you because we're doing closing remarks at this point. Candidates, I can give you up to 2 minutes, and we'll go in the order that we started. So that means that we start this final round with Rebecca Cook.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me here tonight. I think this is a healthy part of democracy. I think something that we're all fighting for. And I want to thank so much UW La Crosse Democrats for your hard work in putting this together, as well as La Crosse County Dems and William Garcia, and of course our fearless moderator, Professor Chergosky. We talked about a lot of things tonight, from the economy to climate to healthcare, childcare, Ukraine, and ultimately how we'll get elected. But I think there's a lot of issues that we didn't get a chance to touch on. You know, how we're going to continue to save the family farms that still exist in our district, how we're going to support small businesses throughout the main streets in our communities that are very much the lifeblood of the places that we come from. And those are a lot of conversations I want to continue to have with you. And I would really love to earn your support. We're on a 19-county tour right now, working to connect with people across this vast geographic district. And I would love to hear from you. And I'm going to be someone that's going to show up and fight for you. As I mentioned, being from here, being working class, I'm the type of person that's going to show up and fight for the things that we care about. I come from a union family. My brother is a union firefighter. My sister works for the teachers union, and I understand those struggles that everyday Americans and everyday Wisconsinites are facing because I've lived them. So I look forward to getting to meet you in the coming months, those of you that are virtual, and to talk more with you, the folks that are here in the room tonight. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mark Newman.
Just an hour and a half ago, I explained how I got started in politics on that fateful day and changed my life. And one thing that I've learned over these last 5 years is it is really great to work at making democracy happen. It sounds simplistic, but it's what I love to imagine that we are doing. We are doing that here in this room, the 6 of us up here on this table, and those that are online. We are making our democracy happen by engaging in these things. And so that's what I would like to close with. When your candidates come before you, we are all colleagues working to serve our voters. And we have to reveal to the voters who we are, what our character is, and the ideas we hold important for our community. We offer those in a public space, and then we ask the voters to do their job that Louis Brandeis, one of our justices, pointed out 100 years ago. The highest office in a democracy is that of the private citizen. We want all of these citizens' votes to be counted, but we also want all of their votes to count, that they can vote with confidence because their candidates and their campaigns have brought to them the candidates' character and their hopes and dreams and offerings for the future of policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb McGrath.
The stakes for this election are high, for our democracy and for our way of life. And let's not forget who Derek Van Orden is. He's an insurrectionist. He will not defend our electoral system nor our rights, and he almost won. One of us will have to face Derek Van Orden in that general election to lead this district and to fight for our democracy. I have 25 years of putting my country first. I am a wife and mother, and I know the challenges that we are facing. I have a fresh perspective born of Wisconsin values. And I am not a career politician. And I am no stranger to being first, if I would be the first female congresswoman for this district. The stakes of this election are high. Every single one of our votes matter. When we go across this great district in the rural areas, those places where people feel like they are forgotten, they are not. I stand today ready to jump again with courage and conviction because I will never stop fighting for you. And I hope to earn your trust. I hope to earn your vote on August 9th. And I thank my fellow candidates for their work on democracy. And thank you for setting up this great debate.
Thank you. Brad Path. Well, thank you. I too thank my fellow candidates for a great night. I thank you here in the audience, and I thank everyone that's listening in at home. This is refreshing to have a conversation with one another, to hear one another, to learn from one another. Now, we may not always agree on everything, but you know what? We don't have to be so disagreeable. You know, and for our country to continue to move forward, we need to have more events like this. We need to work together. We need, again, learn from one another. We really need to recognize that there's more that unites us than divides us. And I think the majority of you recognize how important that is. And I think the majority of you recognize the fact that we can't let Derek Von Orden come even close to Congress. For someone to think that they should participate in an insurrection because they did not like the result of an election, for someone to think that they should stand on the steps of the Capitol during that chaos and riot on January 6th because their preferred presidential candidate didn't win, we can't let someone like that come close to Congress. We have to stand up. We have to make sure that doesn't happen. You know me. You know who I am. You know where I'm from. I've worked hard, day in and day out, in order to make sure that the people of this area have a champion that's fighting for them to rebuild our economy, to make sure our kids and grandchildren have opportunities to succeed, and to make sure that our area's future is even brighter than it is today. Thank you.
Thank you. Brett Knudsen.
Ultimately, why I'm running is to give the leftist discourse. Ultimately, for years and years on end, since we've had Reagan elected, we've seen our political spectrum shift towards the right. Now we have this neo-fascist takeover of our country. It's absurd that it's even part of our political discussion. But we ultimately have to address it. And this is something that we have to shut down. And we have to resist against this. We have to propose leftist policies that is for the workers. It's not trying to go towards some corporate class or corporation specifically. It's going towards the people. That's what we're trying to work for. Your labor, what you deserve, your health care, your housing, it deserves to be affordable. You deserve to live in dignity. Right now, that isn't what you're being given. Nothing is guaranteed to you, and the next day you could have your home taken away from you. You can have health care piled up hundreds of thousands of dollars. Nothing is guaranteed, and your life can be devastated. Snap of a finger. And what we're working for is dignity. What we're working for is that self-dignity where you have guaranteed housing, where you have guaranteed health care. These are things that we need to fight for because far too long we've been letting everything slip away. Whether it be farming policy, not allowing people to unionize with their farms, not having platform floor prices, whether it be housing and letting landlords buy up 1 in 7 houses being bought up by hedge funds. This is ridiculous. They're propping up and platforming how much our housing is, how much it costs to put a roof over our head. And this isn't something that we need to be for profit. It's something that we just deserve to have. We deserve healthcare. We deserve housing. We deserve safety, dignity. We are one of the richest countries in the world, and this is what we can fight for. We need to resist against the right. Thank you.
Thank you. A round of applause for our 5 candidates.